Hello, how are you? This is Sean Combs. I am a former correction officer, and today I want to talk to you about jail food and as it relates to Diddy. What kind of food is he getting? Is it good? Is it bad? I want to talk about that. When I think of Diddy and I think of food, I think of the episode of The Band when he had these young aspiring artists walk all the way from Manhattan to Brooklyn to Junior's to get him a slice of Junior's cheesecake.
But I do want some cheesecake.
Now, for us that live in New York, I'm from Brooklyn, and for anybody who lives in New York or in Brooklyn, we know that Junior's has the best cheesecake in the world. The Cheesecake Factory doesn't hold a candle to Junior's, okay? Junior's has been serving the best cheesecake in the world for like about 40, 50, 100 years. They have not changed their recipe. It tastes just as good now as it did 50 years ago, okay? It's great. Is it worth walking from Manhattan to Brooklyn for cheesecake? I don't think so. When you can just take the A train, get off at J Street, and just walk down the street to the Junior's. That's what he should have told those young people to do, but
But I do want some cheesecake.
it was a nice little skit. But the point I'm making is that right now, Diddy is about 20 minutes from Junior's. And if this case doesn't go right for him, he will never have another slice of Junior's cheesecake ever in life. The best cheesecake in the world is 20 minutes from where he is right now, and he will never, ever have that experience again. All right, now jail food is not good. Have you been to the hospital? Have you visited someone in the hospital? You know, when you go to the hospital or you visit someone in the hospital, the first thing, if they've been in the hospital for any length of time, the first thing they're going to ask you to do is to bring them some real food. Because the food is very bland, the food is very mushy, you know. But you understand that, hey, they're trying to get you well, and, you know, they have your best interest at heart. And that's the reason why the food tastes like that. Well, jail, the food is worse than in the hospital. Okay, so if you put it on a scale, hospital food is here, jail food is down here somewhere. Okay, it's not very good. It's not prepared very well. And when you are eating food from a cafeteria, if you go to the cafeteria at school, or if you're in the hospital, you know, you have the vision of someone that reminds you of your mom, or maybe your grandma, or your auntie is in that kitchen cooking that food. You know, you kind of taste that love that's in the food, and you just have that vision. So if you're at the school cafeteria and you see that lady that looks like your grandma, and you're like, man, I know she knows how to cook, you know, and your food tastes that much better because you know that person had their hand in it. You know, they're connected with this food some kind of way. But in jail, you don't feel like that. You do not feel like that because you got a bunch of dudes making your food. You don't know who they are. You don't know where they're from. And they're in charge. They're tasked with making your food. They're not in charge of making your food, but they're tasked with making your food. And so that's one thing. Now, when I used to work on Rikers Island in C95, C95 has about 2,300 inmates, at least at the time when I was working there. So they're serving a lot of inmates, 3 meals a day. The kitchen is huge. And when you would come to work on Fridays, you would smell burnt fish. As soon as you hit the door, you would get the burnt fish smell, okay? Because they would fry the fish, and they would have these big pots, and they would put the fish in the pot, and the fish that was at the bottom would be burnt. The fish that would be in the middle of the pot would be edible. The fish that was at the top of the pot would be undercooked. So if you're an inmate, you have a 1 in 3 chance of getting edible fish. So 2/3 of the inmates were getting either burnt fish or they were getting undercooked fish. And it's the same thing for chicken. Some of the chicken would be burnt, some of the chicken would be edible, and then some of the chicken would be undercooked with pink inside. So that's just how it was. Now, during my time at C95, the inmates went on a hunger strike because they were tired of getting bad food, and they were tired of getting the same food, potatoes every day. So they wanted to, them to change up the menu. So they started a hunger strike. And I understand what they were trying to do, but when I think about this now, like years and years later, it was kind of funny the way that they tried to do it and the way that they were able to accomplish it. Because, you have advocates, part of the inmate grievance committee. Some inmates have a grievance committee, and they were complaining about the food. And so they weren't getting the proper response that they wanted from the administration. So they decided to start a food strike, a hunger strike. So their goal was to stop inmates from eating the food in the mess hall. Now you got a bunch of guys that are hungry, and you have people telling them, just go to the mess hall and sit down, don't eat. Don't eat. We're trying to send a message to the administration. And so inmates are like, man, what are you talking about? So, because, officers have such a perspective on what inmates are doing and what inmates are thinking, because we're there like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we have a unique perspective of inmates and criminals and the way that they think and the way they go about things. It's the most unique take on criminal behavior out of any profession, any law enforcement profession. We have the bird's eye view. We're standing right there. We're watching this. So I'm watching this go down. I'm like, I don't know how they're going to do this. How are they going to get inmates to go to the mess hall and not eat? So it took a while, but what they started doing, because some inmates have money, some inmates buy commissary, they would go to the mess hall and they would not eat because they had food, from the commissary, so they could munch on the food that they had. But the inmates who didn't have that, who were indigent, who didn't have a job in the jail, or didn't have any money in their commissary account, they were like, yo, what are we supposed to do? We can't just come here and sit down. So it got to the point where they tried to say, they told the inmates who had money and had food from commissary to share it with the inmates that didn't have it. So they were like, okay, those of you who have commissary, give some of your food to the inmates that don't have commissary, so when they get to the mess hall, they won't want to eat. So that kind of worked, but you still had some inmates who wanted to eat. It's like it's a normal thing. You want to sit down and you want to eat. You got to go through all this to get to the mess hall. You have to line up. You have to be escorted down different corridors and stuff like that. You have to. It's like a process. It's a process to eat. And you get there, and then you got to just sit there and not even eat. Inmates couldn't understand that. So it got to the point where they implemented that people who had commissary had to share it with other people who didn't. And then for the inmates that still didn't want to eat, they had to threaten them, to tell them like, hey man, if you go to the mess hall and you eat, when you get back, you're going to get beat down. So after they got that all situated, for about a couple of days, inmates were able to go to the mess hall and just not eat. And that, ignited the conversations between the administration and the inmate grievance council, and they were able to get better food at C95. They changed up the menu. They started not overcooking the fish and not undercooking the chicken. And it was like that for a couple of months. But then it just went back to the way it was before, So I'm trying to tell y'all this as a deterrent from you ever wanting to come to jail. Anybody who's thinking that jail is easy, put that thought out of your head. I explained the intake process. Now I'm explaining the food process. There is no auntie back there making your food. There is no grandma figure back there making your food. It's dudes back there making your food. All right. I worked the kitchen for about 2 weeks when I was in C95. because an officer went on vacation, and they asked me, do you want to go back there and work, in the kitchen? I'm like, yeah, sure. So I went back there and I started working in the kitchen, and I noticed they have a dishwashing station in the kitchen, right? I mean, this is commercial grade stuff. I mean, the pots are like, you could fit in the pot, trays and, all types of things are like supersized, right? So they had this cleaning station, this dishwashing station, where the pots are supposed to be put here, and then there's a sink where you clean out the pots, you get the food particles out of them, and then there's this rack that you put them in, and then it has this cover that you pull down, and then the steam and the hot water comes into that area, and it cleans the dishes, and it's supposed to sanitize the dishes, and then you take those dishes and you put them to the side on the racks so they can dry, right? So I come into the kitchen and I see the inmates cleaning the dishes, but what they're doing, they're bringing the pots in this way, and they're putting them in this steam rack first, and they're steaming them and washing them with the hot water first, with all the food particles already still in them, and then they're taking it out, and then they're washing and rinsing the rest of the food particles out of the pots, and then they're taking the pots, and then they're storing them on the side. And I'm seeing this, and I'm saying, this is not right. So I go to the guys and I tell them, I say, man, you guys are doing this backwards. You're supposed to clean the pots first, take all the food particles out, and then put them in the steamer to sanitize everything, and then put them away. And they're looking at me going, what? And I'm like, yeah, you guys are doing it backwards. And they're like, we always do it like this. And I'm like, fellas, do it the way I'm telling you to do it. And they're like, yeah, okay. So for the 2 weeks I was there, they were doing it the way that it's supposed to be done. They were cleaning the food particles out first with the soap and the water, and then steaming it. They were telling me that they were steaming them first so they can loosen up the food particles so they could rinse the food particles out afterwards. And I'm like, no. Use the soap and the hot water, rinse the food particles out, and then put it in the steamer. So they did it my way for 2 weeks. But after 2 weeks, did they continue doing that? I have no idea. They may have just gone right back to the way they were doing it. I don't know. In the kitchen, there is a cook back there. There is a certified cook back there, but it's not enough cooks back there. It's like a few cooks that have to supervise a whole lot of inmates. You could imagine there is, at this facility, there were 2,300 inmates, and they have to be fed 3 times a day. So they're cooking a lot of food back there. They're doing it under not enough professional supervision. So the food is not very good. It's no love in the food, man. You're not going to taste the food. It doesn't taste like your grandma's food. It doesn't taste like your mom's food. It is very bad food. So do not come to jail. And then when you go to the mess hall to eat, right? The mess hall is set up. Have you seen in the movies where there's all these benches and everybody's sitting side by side and they're eating? Well, when the inmates come into the mess hall, they have to get the food. And there's this petition between the back where they prepare the food and they're serving the food, and the front where the inmates receive the food. There's a wall there. And then there's a little slot at the counter right here, just big enough to slide food through. And it's called blind feeding, where the person that is serving the food cannot see the person who's receiving the food, and vice versa. The person that's receiving the food cannot see the person who's serving the food. And the reason why they've created that type of system is because they have learned that there's more problems when a person can see who's giving them the food, because the person may be somebody that they don't like. It may be a rival. It may be an enemy. And if that person sees the person that they're serving, then it's going to be an issue. So if you're an officer and you're working in the kitchen area, your job is to supervise the inmates, of course, but your job is also to make sure that the inmate who's serving the food is not looking through the slot to see who's coming and put something in his food, or he see his boy and he's putting more on the plate or something, or he sees somebody he doesn't like, he's putting less in the plate. So you're there to say, hey man, stop looking under the partition. You know, don't look through the slot. Just hand the food there. So this is the lengths they have to go through to serve your food. You don't know who is serving your food. You don't know whether they're putting something in their food. And just the food is not good to start off with. You know, there's no person back there that's cooking your food with love in most cases. Now, I'm sure that there's inmates that work the kitchen that take pride in their work, you know, and I'm not trying to say that, you know, people are not doing their jobs to the best of their ability, but the food, the way it tastes, the proof is in the pudding. Like when you eat the food, it's not very good. So that's your deterrent from coming to jail or doing anything that might land you in jail, the food, you know. Now think about this. Thanksgiving is coming up, right? You're gonna have turkey, you're gonna have cranberry sauce, stuffing with gravy. You're gonna have sweet potato pies and things like that, right? Cake and everything. You're not getting that in jail. Kiss that goodbye. You will not get the gravy and the cranberry sauce and the turkey and all that other good stuff and all the trimmings. Your mom's is not gonna be back there cooking your Thanksgiving dinner. You're not gonna have that. All right? The food is not gonna be good. I've been in jail on Thanksgiving. And the only thing I could think about when I was in jail during Thanksgiving is I can't wait to go home to have Thanksgiving dinner. Okay? And that's going to be your thought if you're an inmate in jail. You're going to be thinking, man, it's Thanksgiving. I wish I could go home and sit with my family or my friends or with anybody and have a Thanksgiving dinner. Your ops are making the food. Your gangbangers are making your food. Okay? Let's just keep it real. Let's keep it 100. Gangbangers are making your food in jail. Do you want that? You don't want that. Diddy doesn't want that. Nobody wants that. If you don't have to come to jail, do not come to jail. If you're doing anything that might land you in jail, stop. Think about it. So, and as in Diddy's case, that's what he's eating. And, you know, he doesn't know who's preparing his food. They have no love for him. And he will never, ever, if this case goes bad for him, he will never, ever get another slice of Junior's cheesecake. Junior's is 20 minutes from the Metropolitan Detention Center. And it might as well be on the moon, because he will never get another slice of delicious Junior's cheesecake. So, thank you once again for coming in and checking me out. And until next time, as always, peace and stay safe.